Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's briefing on the growing importance of cyber defense in depth. This is IT governance, as you probably know. We've 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, 12,000 customers across all the continents, and we specialize in IT governance, risk and compliance solutions built around the concept of cyber defense in depth. I'm Alan Calder. I'm your host for this next 20 minutes or so. I've been involved in the industry for some 20 or more years, written a bunch of books, some of which you see on the screen in front of you, and I'm going to be talking through this cyber defense in depth concept for, as I said, the next 20 minutes. If you find that you have questions, which you may well do, please use the Q&A function up in the right-hand side with a bit of luck on your screen. You can type in a question there. We'll see it. I'll be able to then pick it up and answer it. And there should be a couple of minutes for me to answer questions at the end of this webinar. So I'm going to talk about the importance of cyber defense in depth, the first stages of the 5 stages of a strategy, the benefits, and then practical steps that you can take to get there. Starting point is logically, why on earth? What is the point of a cyber defense in depth strategy? So the World Economic Forum said a couple of months ago that looking ahead this year and next year, cybersecurity must be seen as a strategic business issue that impacts decision-making. In other words, not just something for the IT team or the information security team to worry about, but it's a key part of how an organization, strategy, top management vision should include it as part of enabling the business to achieve its objectives. Why? Well, ransomware will attack a device every 2 seconds by 2031, up from every 11 seconds last year. Cybercrime damages up by 15% per annum to 10.5 trillion by 2025, from just 3 trillion in 2015. The cybersecurity workforce gap running at about 2.7 million people. That's how many people are needed to deal with cybersecurity challenges in the workforce today, and those things happening at the same time as, amongst others, the SEC is proposing that all listed US organizations would be required to report cybersecurity incidents and to demonstrate they have in place genuine cybersecurity risk management strategy and governance processes as a condition of listing. As kind of headline challenges, the threat landscape is changing, increasingly sophisticated cyber criminals, serious organized crime, nation-state activity, hybrid warfare, what you see happening in Ukraine, in Lithuania, and Estonia. And for those of you watching television, there's a program running on Friday nights on Channel 4 in the UK, which is very much on that same topic. Digitization, migration to the cloud, all of that means that threat opportunities go up massively. The attack surface has grown because of weaknesses in not just technology, but in people and in processes. The broader supply chain and the managed service provider environments bring opportunities for attackers to focus on a single vulnerability through which they can reach multiple targets, and inadequate governance, risk management, and compliance, a historic bedevilment of organizations, boards simply not thinking that cybersecurity is important. It is. It's an enabler, not just a cost center. Compliance landscape all over the world is changing, picking on the EU and UK, for instance. GDPR is going through multiple updates, certainly much greater enforcement. NIS and NIS2, the Network and Information Security Directive, looks as though in the UK it could be extended to cover MSPs. It's been revised, upgraded, tougher penalties across the European Union, incident reporting in the EU, in the US, a bevy of cybersecurity related regulations in the United States, all of them indicating that governments are saying to organizations, public and private, you've got to get to grips with cybersecurity. And in the supply side, of course, there's not much available to help you get to grips with cybersecurity. That shortage of cyber and privacy professionals, a fragmented market with multiple small providers, many of them with a single solution. They've got one single thing, deploy this piece of software or this piece of training. It will make a difference. It won't on its own. It's simply not enough. And cyber insurance is becoming increasingly expensive and more difficult to obtain. The General Accountability Office in the US just last week said that changes in the cyber insurance market means increasing that organizations face catastrophic risk because they won't be able to get affordable cyber insurance that covers enough of their exposure. So what do? The reality is that cyber attack, the NCSC is saying that there is a period of increased cyber risk coming up. Organizations need to prepare to deal with cyber risk, not just today and tomorrow, but over many months and into next year and thereafter, because of, hey, all of the things that I just talked about. We're in it for the long haul. So organizations have to support their staff through a demanding and challenging period. And it's a demanding and challenging period, not least because ransomware is becoming ever more the crimeware of choice for today's cyber criminals. Biggest online threat to the UK. We don't encourage or condone paying ransoms to criminal organizations, says the NCSC. The reality is that it's not yet illegal. It may well become illegal in the future. We've seen a recent rise in payments to ransomware criminals, and that means that ransomware criminals say, let's do more of this. They quite often come back and attack the organization that just paid them because, hey, they know it won't have had time to put proper defenses in place, and it knows that the criminals know that you're going to pay the ransom. So paying a ransom's, hey, not really the best thing that you could be doing. The reality is that cybersecurity is a team effort, a collective effort. You've got to be able to deal with cyber criminals across a broad area. Cyber criminals attack weaknesses, not targets. They target vulnerabilities. They don't target individual companies. And so more and more organizations have to focus on making sure that all organizations with common software, common posture, take appropriate steps to protect themselves. Ransomware is going to continue to be an attractive route for criminals, particularly with growing professionalization, with differentiation in the supply chain where experts develop ransomware, software experts, those on who have expertise in getting ransomware past firewalls and spam filters, focus on that element. It gets into the hands of people who can buy or rent target lists and who can spread ransomware delivered by other people. So the specialization through the cybercrime chain means that it becomes ever more professional, ever more widespread, ever more of a challenge. And you know, the real issue, particularly with the reduction in cyber insurance, the fact that it's increasingly difficult to get cyber insurance means that organizations have to think about the reality that they're going to get breached. And they're not just going to get breached because somebody gets through their initial defenses. They're going to get a significant attack. And your typical ransomware attack will start off with some form of exploit of internet-facing vulnerabilities, or will look for weaknesses in the fuzzy firewall that is human beings, somebody who can be encouraged to give away a username and password in response to a clever phishing email, which could, right now be something saying, we are employed to protect your organization. Somebody's broken into your organization. In order to protect you, we need you to log into this piece of software here and do the things we tell you to do. And then you do that because you're an obedient member of staff, and hey presto, they have your username and password. So taking over, getting into a network is step one. Download a piece of malware into the target machine, typically step two. Step three, move inside the network to find unprotected data. Not all data will be encrypted inside the network. Find privileged access rights like local administrator rights that are not properly locked down. See if you can take them over. That enables you to do sensible things from a criminal's point of view, like obliterate your tracks, access other data that you shouldn't, be able to upload malware into parts of the network which you shouldn't be able to. Export the data that you found, personal data, intellectual property, whatever, it all has value. Hide malware in the backup software. Hey, if you're in there, you don't want to have to try and find your way back in, so get some malware into the backup software. Typically, hackers are inside a network for pushing half a year before they're found. Trigger the ransom demand through a command and control server outside the internet, outside the target, and then typically raise the stakes. So you've already said you can only get access to your devices if you pay us a ransom. You then say, oh, if you want the data back that we've stolen, you pay us another ransom. And then they go, well, do you know what? We think we'll email all of the people in this data list that we've stolen and tell them that if they would like us not to attack them or exploit their data, they too can pay us a ransom. So triple extortion. So what do? How do you deal with a reality that your typical attack is going to get through the first layer of defense, is going to make real trouble for you? And the answer is you build defense in depth. A defense in depth recognizes that you're going to be penetrated. It accepts that attackers are going to look to get through and that you need to deal with them at multiple levels. So you get peace of mind out of building a defense in depth strategy, which starts off with detecting attacks, builds protection in around critical assets, manages your overall approach to cybersecurity risk, has a structured and pre-planned response, and which is sufficiently well funded to enable you to recover if an attacker is able to get all the way through your defenses. Defense in depth strategy is going to give you the right physical, technical, and administrative controls to safeguard your organizations. And that means that you can say to your customers, you don't need to worry about us being breached. We're on top of this. We've got genuine integrated defense in depth, which enables us to be sure that we can be resilient and survive against any typical cyber attack. So what are the 5 stages? The first is detection. You need to be able to detect an attacker, and that's about continual vulnerability scanning. Remember that attackers are looking for vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are posted every single day onto public databases. So it's very easy for attackers to know which vulnerabilities are new. They've probably not yet been patched. Organizations have strategies about patching vulnerabilities that says, let's do it in a month. You shouldn't. You've got to patch vulnerabilities immediately. There are vulnerabilities which are not yet public. There are zero-day vulnerabilities that attackers pay for. You need to be running vulnerability scans on a continual daily basis so that you're identifying vulnerabilities as and when they occur. That means you can patch them much more quickly. Running a vulnerability scan once a year, there's too much that goes wrong in between those scans. The other thing you need to be focusing on is, of course, phishing. The fuzzy firewall, you need to detect social engineering attacks. Most ransomware attacks come through phishing emails, and phishing emails get more and more professional, more and more successful, and you need to have people really well trained. And that means that you need to be training and retraining. You can't just do an annual phishing training course. You need to be updating it every quarter. You need to be sharing with staff what the most recent phishing attacks look like. Cyber criminals are evolving their attacks on a weekly and monthly basis to make sure they can get through. Remember, cyber criminals are extremely well funded. They make a lot of money. They can afford to drive improvements in their strategies at rates that often we struggle to keep up with. So the next thing you need to do is protect your organization. So you detect it coming in, something is going to get in. You need to have some basic levels of protection. So staff being able to recognize a phishing attack, but you also need to be able to deploy certification schemes like Cyber Essentials. So the certification of Cyber Essentials is just evidence that you've done it. That's useful for customers. But what Cyber Essentials does is it ensures that you've implemented 5 basic technical cybersecurity controls. Cyber Essentials Plus will go a step further and test that those controls generally are working properly. And so Cyber Essentials Plus obviously is a bit more expensive than the basic version, but it's a much more secure place to be. And it's that combined with properly trained staff is the second key level of defense. The next thing you should be thinking about is, how do you manage cybersecurity across your organization? How do you build the additional layers that you need? So the third line of defense really is putting in a proper risk-based set of security controls using an international standard like ISO IEC 27001, which enables you to identify critical assets, work out likelihood of attack, what appropriate defenses might be, and manage the deployments of controls, policies, procedures, and so on to defend those items. You're going to get breached, so you need a form of response. You need to have pre-rehearsed incident response plans. Those need to feed into your business continuity and disaster recovery planning. You've got to be able to soak up a successful attack. You've got to be able to restore your processes to business as usual very quickly before your organization goes down and ceases to be able to operate. You also need to be able to report a breach. So if personal data is compromised in a cyber attack, you need to be able to report that to the ICO. It's a legal requirement under GDPR that all data breaches are reported within 72 hours of first being discovered. And then, of course, if it all goes seriously belly up, you need to be able to afford the cost of reconstruction. And that means having enough insurance cover. Cyber insurance is becoming more and more expensive, ever fewer providers in the market because organizations get breached and it's expensive for them to cover. But you need to make sure that you've got genuine cover in place, you know how to access it, and that you can deploy it in such a way that you can use it to support your recovery processes while continuing to defend the organization. Because cyber attackers having attacked don't just leave you alone, they quite often will come back. So you can think of that as a 5-line cyber defense strategy: detective, preventive, and then a more mature preventive approach, corrective, and then recovery. Cybersecurity is not a control. It doesn't reduce the risk of being attacked. It simply mitigates the expense of dealing with an attack. And cyber defense in depth, building integrated sets of controls that deal with each of those lines of defense, is how all sensible organizations today are addressing the changing threat and attack landscape. If you go onto our website, you can find out about continual vulnerability scanning. You can find out about our quarterly updated phishing awareness program, which brings the latest in awareness of sophisticated phishing emails, also by combinations of email and text to your staff. You can find out about cybersecurity incident response, a wide range of services, from simply being able to buy it off the shelf, so to speak, to having a maintained relationship in place, how we can help you with data breach reporting, and most importantly, the idea of cybersecurity as a service. We know that increasingly organizations putting together the complex set of controls of products and services that you need to be able to deal with today's threats is complex. So we've tried to take that challenge away. We've created the idea of cybersecurity as a service, which pulls all the governance, risk management components together into a single offering which you can access. And its most practical form, what you could think of as cyber defense in depth in a box, we call Cyber Safeguard. Cyber Safeguard provides all of the essential components: the staff awareness training, the continual vulnerability scanning, the very easy to roll out, very simple to deal with how you access those, emergency cyber incident response with help in putting together a response process, goods on standby legal and cybersecurity expertise, and then cyber insurance built in. So up to £500,000 worth of cyber insurance in our gold cyber safeguard package embedded in the product. So simply buying a package which is built on the idea that, for instance, you already have Cyber Essentials Plus, or you can get it, we're a Cyber Essentials certification body. You can then access Cyber Safeguard, get £500,000 worth of embedded cyber insurance, which with a bit of luck, you may never need because of all of the security controls that are built into both Cyber Essentials Plus and Cyber Safeguard. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, a brief look at why cyber defense in depth is the logical, sensible way for organizations to go in today's environment. If you do have any questions about any aspect, please do put them into the Q&A bot or the chat function down the right-hand side. We'll pick them up and answer them. If you don't have any questions, that's not a problem. There is, if you want to download the slides, they're available to everybody. If you go into the chat function right now, you'll see a link in there from which you can download this set of slides. If they're going to be useful to you, please do go ahead. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, we said it would only be 20 minutes. So thank you all for joining us. We do have a series of webinars and briefings. You can access us through any one of our websites, anywhere on social media. Please feel free to do that. Please, above all, stay safe. If you have a ransomware attack, call us. We're here to help. If you haven't, call us. We'll help you make sure it doesn't happen. I hope you all have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye.